Pornified culture and traumatized kids. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, we hear a lot from prominent figures about the need to empower girls and women at school, in sports, and in the workplace.
I think it's important to tell all girls that you can be whatever you want to be.
We must empower women. When women succeed, all of society benefits.
Somehow, that powerful, empowering message ended up turning us into what? Toddlers and tiaras, tweens and revealing midriffs, teens and blouses that look more like bustiers. Yeah, the fashion industry looked pornified over the years, leading to complaints from moms and dads and anyone who cares about innocence, because of the messages that this sends to perverts and degenerates and what it does to girls' self-esteem. And now the slippery slope has dropped us into the sewer, where sexual subjugation and domination, staples of the porn industry, are now common practice by young people, because they learn these degrading practices from the porn industry. And we know that the porn kings, what they create: addiction, emotional abuse, and violence.
Porn has gotten more violent over the years, so therefore there has been more violent tendency towards women during rape and dating mishaps. There's also subjectification of women because of pornography. People who watch porn are less likely to act on sexual assault and sexual violence when they see it, because they've been programmed to accept that that's okay.
This is why so-called non-fatal sexual strangulation is now considered okay by an increasing number of college students. Dr. Debbie Herbenek told the New York Times that she's tracked a dramatic and rapid rise in so-called rough sex. Nearly two-thirds of the 5,000 female students surveyed said it had happened to them, and 40% say they were between the ages of 12 and 17 for the first time they experienced this. Again, sexual strangulation between partners. Again, you can thank the porn industry, specifically websites like Pornhub, which are part of the industry's $100 billion global business. Although stores aren't legally allowed to sell kids cigarettes or booze without seeing an ID, somehow the porn industry has been free to profit off selling its toxic material to minors. And the consequences for both young women and men who can access this have been devastating. Last spring, the New York Times described how-to articles around the internet and social media algorithms that feed young people, but typically not their unsuspecting parents, hundreds of hashtag #ChokeMeDaddy memes, along with memes that mock and even celebrate the potential for hurting or killing female partners. And the same elites who pretend to care so much about girls are culpable as well. Remember in 2015 when all those suburban women were obsessed with the glorified gutter dive into mainstreaming porn, otherwise known as 50 Shades of Grey?
You're a sadist?
I'm a dominant.
What does that mean?
It means I want you to willingly surrender yourself to me.
Why would I do that?
To please me.
To please you? How?
I have rules. If you follow them, I'll reward you. If you don't, I'll punish you.
The threat of punishment, he says there. And the threat of punishment and bondage is now marketed to girls online as sexual thrill-seeking. Peggy Orenstein wrote in the Times, by 2019, when a high school girl was choked in the pilot of HBO's Euphoria, it was standard fare. A young woman was choked in the opener of The Idol, again on HBO, and also, like the show Euphoria, created by Sam Levinson. What's with him? Yeah, that's worth asking that question again. What is wrong with Sam Levinson? Is that the new feminism we're supposed to want for our daughters, Sammy? Nice going. It's gotten so bad that emergency rooms are seeing more severe injuries from this twisted choking practice, which can even result in stroke and traumatic brain injuries, and where consenting females often turn into domestic abuse victims. Yet again, the kinkier the better in the porn world. And now the depraved world that lives in is accessible by anyone with an internet connection. And it's destroying not just families and marriages, but now our young people. But why should we allow this as a society? Why do we have to allow this as a society? Don't we have a duty to protect minors from an industry that thrives on luring younger and younger people into their darker and darker world?
For over 10 years, they were master groomers. I was intimidated. They're standing over me saying, sign here, initial here. And I'm like, can I read these? From like 9 p.m. till 4 in the morning, I was raped. I tried to run naked from the hotel room at one point, and there was someone outside of the door. And they're like, oh, then we'll put everything on the internet that we have right now with your full name, or we'll send it to your parents. Do you want them to find out?
That's the kind of stuff that's happening online. Finally, Americans are beginning to wake up. The Texas state legislature passed HB 1181, which requires age verification in order to access online sexual content. The law forced Pornhub out of the state, a huge success in and of itself. But now that group is firing back via another group called the Free Speech Coalition, which took Texas to federal court, arguing that HB 1181 violates the First Amendment by burdening adults' right to access pornography and other sexual material. Now, of course, ID verification doesn't burden adults' access to porn any more than showing ID before boarding a plane violates your right to interstate travel. It's an absurd, ridiculous argument. The Supreme Court will hear arguments in this case on January 15th. But remember, with its powerful allies in the entertainment industry and big tech, the porn industry is working 24/7 to drag our young people into their godless, vile world. The physical, mental, and spiritual carnage is immeasurable. It is criminal. And if we don't step up, what's next? I'll tell you what's next. Mainstreaming pedophilia. I know you're thinking, oh, Laura, you're just exaggerating. Please. The NIH is even seemingly getting in on the act, taking baby steps toward destigmatizing it. And watch out, everybody, for the hashtag MAP on social media sites. It stands for Minor Attracted Persons. And books are now being written about how the MAP world is nobly pursuing a path of dignity. Adults who consider children as objects of sexual desire, they deserve dignity? Just like girls and women deserve the privilege of being defiled, strangled, hit, spat upon to fulfill their partner's porn-fueled fantasies? Fantasies, by the way, that are introduced to them on free porn websites and social media platforms. How can we live with ourselves if we allow this to continue? How can we look at ourselves in the mirror if we stand by and do nothing as our children are sucked into this abyss? Even before porn exploded on the internet, the victims were trying to warn us, like kidnapping victim Elizabeth Smart.
I remember he pulled out this magazine full of hardcore pornography, and I remember he would just sit and look at it and stare at it. It just led to him raping me more than he already did, which was a lot. Looking at pornography wasn't enough for him. Having sex with his wife after looking at pornography, it wasn't enough for him. He just always wanted more. I can't say that he would not have gone out and kidnapped me had he not looked at pornography. All I know is that pornography made my living hell worse.
She was 14 when she was kidnapped. We'll be watching how this age verification plays out, this case, and who's on what side, which groups will side with the children and their innocence, and which side with the porn peddlers. And that's the angle.
Ronald Reagan famously said this:
"We, as Americans, have the capacity now, as we've had in the past, to do whatever needs to be done to preserve this last and greatest bastion of freedom. In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem."
Government has only gotten bigger. We're $36 trillion in debt, agencies are bloated, and bureaucrats have never been lazier. Biden spent 40% of his presidency on vacation, but compared to the rest of the government, he's a workaholic. A new Senate report says only 6% of federal workers go into the office 5 days a week. And if you don't count security guards and maintenance staff, only 1% of government workers do 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. 1%. Almost 90% of government office buildings are completely empty. So where is everyone? One manager at Veterans Affairs took a picture of himself working from a bubble bath. He called it "my office for the next hour." What kind of man takes a bubble bath? Men age out of bubble baths at 5. If you're a guy and you're alone in a bubble bath, that's a problem. You have to have someone with you. Remember when the GSA got caught in a Vegas bubble bath holding a California cab? Yeah. And the only federal workers showing up to the office are having sex with each other. If you caught the show yesterday, we reported a Breitbart exclusive, a major scandal rocking the VA. Our report stated there was a 12-person orgy, but we have to issue a correction. It wasn't a 12-person orgy. It was 15. We apologize to the 3 we left out. And they've all resigned, but don't worry, they get to keep their pensions.
Employees to have sex with each other at work?
Absolutely not.
So why is it that we have at least 15 Mountain Home, Tennessee VA employees who have allegedly had sex on the VA property? They've not been disciplined.
Those actions are reprehensible, extremely inappropriate. We also have seen every implicated person leave the VA, resign, and an investigation is underway across all of the leaders and individuals involved here.
If it's not hot tubs or orgies, it's alcohol. 2 years ago, Nancy Pelosi opened up a liquor store in Congress. And yes, they cater. So if any politicians want to knock back a cognac or have a glass of Pinot, Nancy's waitstaff will bring it straight to your office. No wonder they spend so much money. They're all drunk. And we're not talking about a glass or two here and there. Members of Congress can order cases of wine and liquor. Cases. We found some items Congress has been spending money on, and it has to be after a few rounds. Are you ready? $500,000 for an IHOP in D.C. What, Jerry Nadler need his pancakes? Almost $2 million for holograms of dead comedians. $3 million for girl-centered climate action group in Brazil. Sounds kind of like porn. $45 million on DEI scholarships in Burma. Isn't everyone in Burma DEI? And they still had about $150 billion left over to spend on illegals last year. $150 billion with a B. If you're wondering, the Manhattan Project, adjusted for inflation, only cost $30 billion. The Panama Canal, $15 billion. The Hoover Dam, $1 billion. You don't need a PhD in economics to know we're getting ripped off.
Unless you don't have a brain above a single cell organism, you know that there is waste in the federal government. There's enormous waste. Cutting waste up here is kind of like going to heaven. You know, everybody wants to do it, but nobody's quite ready to make the trip.
That was until today. Trump finally got Elon out of Mar-a-Lago and sent him to Capitol Hill. And he brought someone special. And we're not talking about Vivek.
Elon, how's the meetings been today? Haven't you went over people who say Doge doesn't have any power? Do you think you can still...
Elon, how do you define success for Doge? Elon, do you want to see Democrats here?
Trump's taking a blowtorch to D.C. The goal is to cut $2 trillion from the budget. And if you're working from home, you're not working hard enough, so pack your bags. Here's Vivek.
The idea of reducing the federal employee headcount is not really about saving cost. Part of what you have is an overgrown federal government that is doing things that were never supposed to be done by the federal government in the first place. You look at the number of times in the last 2 years alone, or 2 to 3 years, that the action of a federal agency has been struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. So I think part of the project of thinning out the federal bureaucracy, that's less about the headcount expenses, and it's more about actually respecting the rules of the road in the constitutional republic.
Doge is taking aim at illegal regulations. And now the second richest man in the world is asking, how can I help?
I'm very hopeful about this. He seems to have a lot of energy around reducing regulation. And my point of view, if I can help him do that, I'm going to help him. Because we do have too much regulation in this country. This is the most important thing, a growth mindset. And we are the luckiest country in the world. We have all these natural resources, including energy independence. You've probably grown in the last 8 years. He has too. What I've seen so far is that he is calmer than he was the first time and more confident, more settled.
The two richest men in the world are going to streamline the government to run it like a corporation. And now the third richest man wants in. Mark Zuckerberg just made a pilgrimage to Mar-a-Lago to talk shop with Trump. And everyone's on notice. Executives from big pharma companies like Pfizer flew down to Mar-a-Lago this week to have dinner with Trump. And 47 brought a surprise guest. RFK Jr. came and sat down at the table with the big pharma executives so we can live fact check. Besides Maha, another topic of discussion, a cure for cancer. It was a 3-hour dinner, probably because of the fact-checking. And as it wound down, we're told DJ Donald Trump pulled out his iPad and blasted Pavarotti. Meanwhile, at the FBI, agents are gearing up for a big clash with cash. Mr. Patel, Trump's pick for director, says he wants to turn the Hoover Building into a museum for the deep state. And it's not going over very well.
I talked to a number of executives at headquarters who are absolutely have already polished off their resume as soon as Trump was named as winner of the election and are out there actively pursuing other careers. Their chief concern and what they're going to be keenly looking for, and we should all be looking for as well, is the degree to which a Patel in that position is going to impact the field offices. The clash is going to occur rather immediately. It's going to occur almost immediately. And again, this desire to do away with civil service protections, I'm sure, the Agents Association and other law firms are ready to go on challenging that.
Some governors are putting up a resistance. Gavin Newsom says he wants to spend millions to Trump-proof California, whatever that means. Other Democrats are saying, cut it out.
I do wonder what that means, the Trump-proof a state. Like, how do you Trump-proof a state in America? Like, what happens when you need the president of the United States of America for something? You know what I mean? Like, I don't quite understand what that means. Make it about the policies, because when you say things like Trump-proof, you're going to end up looking like a hypocrite when, you need the president for something and you all in his face smiling and cheesing the same way, President Biden was after they called him a threat to democracy and all of these other things. And then he was like, welcome back, when it came time for the White House. So it's like, cut it out.
Even Bill Clinton says enough is enough.
I do think we should stop trying to criminalize politics. But on the other, I think we should, both of us, because obviously, and the people don't like it and they're not going along with it from right to left.
Everyone's begging for mercy. Mexico, after getting threatened with a 25% tariff, just seized a record haul of fentanyl from the Sinaloa cartel. Trump hasn't even laid down the tariffs, and Mexico's getting their act together. Real men are back in D.C., and all the little critters are trying to clean up the mess before Dad comes home. But they want to throw one last pardon palooza. They want Biden to toss a pardon blanket over the entire Capitol. Fauci, Jack Smith, Adam Schiff, even journalists. These jokers haven't even asked for pardons. Democrats are just assuming they'd want them because they know what they've done. And Biden's thinking about it.
I think that they're taking every opportunity here to explore the options they have left in the time that they have left in office to protect people who may be subject to that attack. So yes, I think it is absolutely a serious process they're undergoing.
Biden's leaving office in the wake of pardons, orgies, alcohol, empty office buildings, and bubble baths. What a legacy.
We are, and I say this for all of my colleagues in the front here, we are Fox, we are different. This is a different night. This night is about honoring the great people in our country that truly make this country great. This is about the unsung heroes in our communities and our country, people that risk their lives to make our lives better, the people that deserve the most recognition and never get any recognition. So I've got all our friends and colleagues. They're going to be up here on stage tonight. Are you ready to get the show started? Are you ready to get the show started? All right, all of you in attendance here that are with Fox, stand up so our audience can see. These are my friends, my colleagues. They will be on the stage tonight.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.